It was supposed to be a good day. You know, the kind of day that you look back on and think, yeah, that was a good one. I had just moved to Willow Creek Ridge, a seemingly perfect suburban neighborhood where everything looked like it belonged in a magazine, lawns as green as a golf course, houses that looked like they were straight out of a designer catalog, and rules. Oh, the rules. The kind of rules that were thicker than a phone book and made you think twice about doing anything out of line. Now, I'll tell you a little secret about me. I'm not your typical millionaire. I know what you're thinking, someone who's probably in a suit all the time, driving around in a shiny new car, and flashing their wealth. But that's not me. I'm what you might call a low-key millionaire. You see, I built my pet supply empire from the ground up. Paw's First International started in my garage, and now it's a billion-dollar company. But here's the catch: I don't look the part. I like to dress like I just came off a thrift store clearance rack. Old jeans with honest wear, a faded t-shirt, and sneakers that looked like they'd walked through 3 different decades. It's my little experiment, you could say. You learn a lot about people when they think you're nobody special. Now, back to the day that everything went haywire. The day I made the mistake of buying my dream car, a black Tesla Model S Plaid. Yeah, you heard me right. A Dula $150,000 car. But let me set the scene. I was standing outside, tablet in hand, ready to sign for the delivery. I couldn't wait to feel the smooth lines of that car, to see it in the flesh, and yet just to enjoy the fact that I had worked my ass off to afford it. That's when I heard the click of heels on the pavement. I turned around, and there she was, Linda Whitfield, the self-righteous HOA president, dressed in a power suit that screamed middle management. She looked me up and down, and without so much as a greeting, she said, "Excuse me, whose car is this?" I didn't even flinch. "It's mine," I said, keeping my tone friendly. "Just got delivered. Is there a problem?" She looked me over, wrinkling her nose as though she'd smelled something foul. "You're the delivery driver?" she asked, like she couldn't believe I could afford a car like that. I nearly burst out laughing. "No, I live here," I said. "Number 47, just moved in last week." Her face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then something worse. Outrage. "I'm Linda Whitfield," she snapped. "I'm the HOA president, and I know everyone in this neighborhood. You must be confused." Before I could respond, her son, Brandon, popped out of the house next door. He looked like someone who had never worked a hard day in his life, all soft edges and designer clothes. He locked eyes with the Tesla, and his face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Mom, that's a Tesla Model S Plaid. That's like a Dula $150,000 car," he exclaimed. Linda looked at her son, then back at me, and something calculating flashed in her eyes. She reached out, smoothing his hair in a way that made my skin crawl. "Yes, Brandon. It is," she said. "And you deserve a car like this more than this person." She motioned toward me like I was something she had scraped off her shoe. Brandon looked uncomfortable. He shifted his weight from foot to foot. "Mom, let's just go home," he mumbled. But Linda wasn't done. Oh no, she wasn't. She squared her shoulders, took a step toward me, and, with the kind of convy tie-in only someone in her position could muster, said, "As HOA president, I need to see your proof of residence and vehicle registration. This is clearly some kind of mistake." I crossed my arms. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I don't think that's necessary," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I bought the house. I bought the car. End of story." Her face turned an interesting shade of red. "My son has an MBA from Stanford," she hissed, her voice rising. "He's been looking for a job for 6 months. He deserves a car like this, not some." She gestured at me, unable to finish the sentence without her words losing their venom. "Brandon, please, let's just go," Brandon whispered, tugging at her arm. But Linda wasn't listening. She pulled out her phone, and with all the dramatic flair of a soap opera of Y Lane, she dialed 911. "I'm calling the police," she declared. "There's a theft in progress." I sighed and leaned back against my shiny new Tesla, resigned to what was about to unfold. "Here we go," I muttered. Brandon caught my eye and mouthed, "I'm sorry," but his mother was already pulling him away. Linda kept complaining about how unfair it was that someone like me could afford such a car while her brilliant, educated son was stuck driving a 10-year-old Honda. She actually used the phrase redistribution of wealth at one point, which made me wonder if she understood how purchasing a car worked. Then, just as the sirens grew louder in the distance, I heard her final words. "This car will belong to my son by any means necessary." Those words. They stuck with me. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't going to end with just one police visit. I could feel it. I knew what was coming. When Officer Martinez arrived, he looked more tired than anything, probably from dealing with ridiculous calls all day. Linda immediately rushed up to him, waving her arms like she was directing air traffic. "Officer, thank goodness you're here," she exclaimed. "This man is stealing a car. He claims it's his, but look at him." Martinez held up a hand, trying to slow her down. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see his license, registration, and proof of residence." I nodded and pulled out my wallet, handing over the documents. Then, I reached into the Tesla, grabbed the folder with my house deed, and handed it over as well. Martinez carefully examined the papers while Linda watched, hoping to spot something to discredit me. "Everything checks out," Martinez finally said, handing them back to me. "Mr. Morrison here legally owns both the house and the car." Linda's mouth hung open like a fish out of water. "But that's impossible," she stammered. Martinez, with a raised eyebrow, turned to her. "Ma'am, that's not how ownership works. You can't deserve someone else's property just because you have a degree." That was when Brandon, bless him, tried to step in. "Mom, please. You're embarrassing yourself," he said quietly, but Linda wasn't listening. But then, something remarkable happened. Tom Bradley, a neighbor and a lawyer who was always looking for ways to call out the HOA's nonsense, jogged over. He greeted me with a handshake and then, with a look of amusement, turned to Officer Martinez. "Officer, fun fact," he said, pulling out his phone. "This is the 47th time Linda Whitfield has called 911 this year. I keep a spreadsheet." Martinez looked shocked. 47. Tom nodded, scrolling through his phone. January 3rd, suspicious squirrel. February 15th, clouds flying too low. March 22nd, neighbor's garbage can placed at a 15 degrees angle instead of 90 degrees. The absurdity of it all hit me like a wave. Linda sputtered in outrage, but Tom wasn't done. "By the way," he continued, "did you all notice that HOA fees went up 40 fan tram last month for landscape improvements? Haven't seen a single new flower bed yet." Linda looked like she wanted to explode. Brandon, on the other hand, looked like he was finally seeing his mother for what she was, someone who had twisted the truth to fit her needs, all while pushing her son into a corner. The next few days were a whirlwind of drama. Posters went up all over the neighborhood, declaring that Brandon Whitfield deserves better, with a picture of him in his graduation cap and gown, all with Linda's face plastered across it. It was bizarre, to say the least. But here's where it gets interesting. Brandon, now fully aware of how much of a mess his mom had made, actually reached out to me. He apologized for her behavior and even offered to help with some of the distribution work at my company. He had an MBA, sure, but what he really wanted was to learn something real. And that's when I realized he wasn't the problem. It was his upbringing that had left him so lost. I gave him a chance. I started him off at the bottom, but he worked his ass off, learning logistics from the ground up. And you know what? He impressed me. He made mistakes, sure, but he learned from them. And then, Linda? She didn't learn a damn thing, but she did end up paying the price. She was caught embezzling HOA funds and making fake claims. The community turned on her, and she was finally removed from her position. Brandon, on the other hand, worked his way up. He earned a promotion. And after months of hard work, he saved enough money to buy his own car. A used Prius. A step toward redemption for sure. As for Linda, she ended up working at Target, humbled by the very life she thought she deserved. It wasn't glamorous, but at least it was honest. Maybe that was the first step toward her redemption. But as the world moves on, I can't help but wonder, what's the real lesson here? Do people like Linda ever truly learn? Or do they just move on to the next deserved thing? What do you think? Leave your thoughts below. Do you believe success is something you deserve or something you earn? I'd love to hear your take on it.